day 18, and it doesn't feel like it's been 18 days to me, but maybe it is to you. But I am super excited that I've got one of my favorite guests of all time on with me today. He's one of my favorite guests. She was actually the first guest ever when I did my Talent Talk podcast many, many years ago. So she's always seems to be willing to show up and talk. But I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. She probably needs no introduction. Most of you know who she is. But Kim Shepard, go ahead and tell everyone who you are, what's going on. Thanks for being here. Great to see you.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I'm the gal that it took you all these years to invite back. So as your favorite person, let me just put that placeholder out. So my name's Kim Shepard. I had a company for a long time called Decision Toolbox, and it was a high volume, low fee based recruitment. I've known Chris for probably 20 years. We've done a lot of things together. We met in a CEO roundtable. I took my company virtual in 2002, which looked like a brilliant thing to do, but it was really so that I could avoid bankruptcy, because after 9/11, no one was hiring, and we almost went upside down. So I decided to get rid of all the expenses except my people, which I wanted to hang on to. At the time, I had 37 people. When I sold the company 4 years ago, I had about 120. Helped Chris take his business virtual, which was a wonderful thing. And the nice thing that ties to culture is when you're remote, which back then it was called virtual, it wasn't called remote. But when you're remote, you can hire the best people anywhere in the world that you find them. And in November of 2019, I think it was, pre-COVID, Chris and I got together and decided to write a book called Remote Work. And then voila, COVID hit. And remote work happened to be about the hottest topic going, and it was completely accidental for us, right, Chris?
It was totally accidental. We were in the right place at the right time. I think I would have chosen not to have had COVID, but it was certainly, if you're going to have a pandemic, you might as well have a book out that deals with that, everything that was going on. So you and I were in the right place at the right time.
And the fact that the title Remote Work was even available is mind-blowing.
Yeah. And of course, you left out that just this year, I talked you into going and climbing a mountain in Africa. So we just got back from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and I would say it was probably a huge bucket list thing. I love spending all that time with you, and we had a million great laughs and climbed the mountain, did all the things, and you even came home with a tattoo to prove it.
That's right. I got the t-shirt and the tattoo in a village with dead chickens and urine in the staircase. And it was crazy. But it was a little over a year ago. I was Chris and I, our birthdays are a couple of days apart. And he was having a little gathering at a beer garden. And he said to me, hey, after 5 beers, hey, next year for our birthday, why don't we climb Mount Kilimanjaro? And I said, you know what? Let's do it. And he calls me up the next day and goes, you said yes, but I want to make sure if you really meant yes. And I said, Chris, I wasn't the one drinking beer. Are you in? And so that's where the adventure began. And we got to spend a lot of time, a year training. And it was just an unbelievable experience, and one that I would never want to repeat.
Yeah, sometimes we do things and once is enough, right? So because the reason I brought this up is you and I are both people who like to say yes, right? It's our first inclination to say, yeah, let's try it. Sure, let's do it. And, let's take a look at that. I mean, when I said, let's go climb Mount Kilimanjaro, you said yes. We had Troy Hoffman on a few last week, and he's the person who says yes, right? I asked him, and he said, he didn't even ask me where that was. He didn't ask me how high it was. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And he was a man of his word. Do you think that as a part of this topic today, creating a sticky culture in a remote company, do you think that saying yes, being open to those new ideas, willing to try it, is a part of that equation or part of that formula that was part of your success?
It is imperative, because the nice thing about yes and no, when you say no, it's emphatic, and it's no, the door's closed, it's stopped. If you say yes, you can be wrong and then say yes to something else and try something new. So I believe not only is it optimistic, and I am pathologically positive, that's just my DNA, But I believe that saying yes and trying to figure it out keeps your brain fresh. It keeps the energy in your company fresh because your employees know that you're a yes kind of person. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We'll try something else.
Right, right. And that really creates this sort of innovation in a company, I think, because when somebody knows that if I'm going to put my neck out and I'm going to go tell Kim that I want to do this thing, or I have this idea, or we should do this thing for a client, if you're willing to say yes, then they're willing to step up and tell you what they think, to come up with new ideas. Whereas if you're the no girl, why would they bother bringing you an idea? Even if they had the best idea ever, why would they even bother talking to you about it? I mean, I literally know bosses. I know people who will get mad at somebody for interrupting them or bringing something to them, right? They're so, I don't know, they believe they can do it all, they know it all. But I think some of the best innovation we ever had came from my people who were on the ground, that they saw what was going on and they knew I'd be willing to say yes. I'd be willing to try it. I'd be willing to listen, right?
Right, right. Well, I believe in a successful company. The success of your company is based almost 100% around the content of your people. And you can be a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person. The glass half full person encourages them to come up with ideas, to move the ball forward. It's that yes identity. And the easiest thing, and I know so many CEOs that get tangled up in their underwear trying to figure out, how do I hire the best and how do I retain the best? It's really pretty simple. In our book, Chris, we talk about the Jedi principle. I believe that I'm a Jedi, from Star Wars. A Jedi is that yummy kind of person that we're Jedis. You're a Jedi. I'm a Jedi. And in interviews, I will say, I'm a Jedi and I'm looking to hire other Jedis. Tell me a Jedi story. And Jedis have one and non-Jedis don't. So once you hire a Jedi, the easiest way to keep them is to say, how do I keep you? It's that simple. What can I do to make you better, happier, more productive in your current role? What can I do for you? And that's stripping down. The no people will never get to that place. The yes people say, if you don't give me an answer, that's okay. At least I asked. And if you do give me an answer, I remember that I had an employee that I really wanted to keep, and I could tell something was wrong. And I went to them and I said, you know what? I know that there's something that I can give to you that I'm not currently giving to you, and I have no idea what it is. What is it? And he said, I would like dental. And I looked at dental benefits. I looked at the cost of giving my employees dental, which I had never really thought about before. And it was way below the cost of replacing a star performer. So voila, we had dental, and that person stayed with me for 18 years. Just ask them, what do you need? What do you want? We talk about tiger teams, Chris, and one of the most fun tiger teams I ever did, that's where you get a group of about 4 or 5 people from different departments in your company, and you present them with a dilemma or a situation, and you get their feedback. And I have done some very intelligent ones, but the most effective one I ever did wasn't particularly intelligent, but it was scrappy. And we had taken over the Queen Mary. I had about 100 employees at the time, so they were in groups of 5 all over the Queen Mary. And their dilemma was, you have $1 million to spend to make your company a better company, spend it. Now, I didn't give them $50,000 because they would intelligently spend it, but I gave them $1 million that they really didn't know how to spend. And out of that, about 80 ideas came that didn't cost me a penny and greatly improved the culture of my company. And it came right from them.
Yeah, and we use that term, the tsunami planning, right? As that type of a thing. Like, what's the big thing we want to try to do or try to solve? And we used to give people these fake topics. Right? I mean, you sort of gave them a fake one too. You weren't really going to give them $1 million, but it would be, what would happen if I ended up in a coma tomorrow?
Right.
Right. What do we do? What does a company need to think about, does someone else have access to the bank accounts? Can someone else deal with the credit cards? Like
Right.
whatever. But there's also the fun stuff. Like, how do you spend $1 million? I mean, that's amazing. And you're right. So many great ideas come out of that didn't actually cost us money.
Yeah, and we would do with my executive team, we'd do tsunami planning 4 times a year. And I would create a binder that had all of our tsunami things. And basically what they are blueprints to imaginary problems. Not only did we go into that binder and pull them out several times when all of a sudden we doubled our revenue overnight, or we lost our largest client, or I got hit by a bus, or whatever it is. We had this binder of all this stuff. But what it does beyond that is it gets people thinking in an unusual way, and they get addicted to it. I mean, it's better than caffeine, because you're asking their brain to imagine a solution to a problem that has not yet happened and may never, ever happen. And that's a rewire of your brain. And you want your key performers thinking that way. We as CEOs, we live in that marshmallow pit. We live in what we call the Swiss cheese. We don't look at the cheese, we look at the holes in the cheese and how do we fill those holes. We do that instinctively almost 24 hours a day. But to invite others, people that you want to think critically, into that kind of thinking is they crave it, and it changes them in really wonderful ways.
So one of the other things that people should think about if they want to have a sticky culture is probably what you just heard. Over this sequence, you've probably heard a bunch of words that you have no idea what they mean. Cockroach meetings, tsunami planning meetings, right? We're talking about all these things that are unique to a company, that are these special things we've given special names to. And I call that tribal speak. That is, there's great examples of this. Walmart's got these long acronyms that only they know, that only employees know what they mean. If you go to Disneyland, I mean, they refer to each other and they have an entire language, cast members, backstage, they have a whole way in which they talk that's special. And I think if you can create some of that, you don't have to do it all yourself as the business owner, you can get people to help you. But if you can come up with names for things and create this tribal speak, it helps the stickiness, right? It's like, this is something special only we know. And calling a cockroach meeting or having that tsunami planning, that's a bit of fun, and it's a bit of difference than just I'm a clog in this big company with KPIs and blah, 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 right?
It is so important. I mean, and everybody has tribal speak, but they don't exacerbate it. We would exacerbate it. I remember sending out an email to my entire company saying, we just landed a chunky monkey, but flagged the cockroach committee because the dog has fleas. What? And every single person in my company knew exactly what that meant. We just landed a big client, but it's got some rough edges. So we're going to need to have a committee take a critical look at it, and yay for us. That's tribal speak. That is free glue. It's free glue. And I remember one time I'd spent a lot of time trying to think up new, this is maybe 12 years into having a remote company, and you run out of ideas, right? And I was going on a vacation. And speaking of vacations real quick, I would always say to my team, if you go on vacation, if you're wired, you're fired. And the reason is if you feel like you have to keep one foot in the trench, I have done something wrong. Because everyone should be covered. And in the 20 years I had my company, I never once, ever looked at an email, ever. If the house was burning down, send me a text, but I never looked at an email because it's a black hole you can't get out of. It's just crazy. I was going to say something and I just lost my train of thought. I'm backing up. It happens to me a lot. I'm old.
Well, you bring up a great one of your wired, you're fired. That's another way to create a sticky culture, because what we're saying, we're not only do we care about burnout, not only do we care about people having that time off and enjoying their vacation, but we're putting in an actual thing, an actual policy, or something that means something to reinforce the idea. We're not just giving lip service to, oh, you're on vacation. We want you to live your best life and not look at your email. No, we're saying if I catch you, you're going to be in trouble.
Right.
It means that much to us that we're, and I had the same policy. What we used to do was we would also have an ostrich meeting. This was another type of meeting where it's the help me get my head out of the sand. So we had the if you're wired, you're fired policy. We also had the you must put an out of office on your email that says, I'm not going to read your email. It's going to be deleted. You can reach me on this date, and here's some other people that can help you. Another structure to help them disengage, to get cut off from everything. And then we would do the ostrich meeting when they came back. So the team would tell them, this is what you missed. This is what's going on. Yeah, you probably should go back and look for those 3 emails from Sally because she's going to be a problem for you this week. But like, other than that, we got it covered. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
Right. That structure, that creates the kind of environment that we want our employees to thrive in versus, I think, just sort of letting things happen. Right.
It's the purity of it too. If you think about it, you want purity in your culture, and that really stems from the first thing you said right out of the gate, and that's being yes. We're going to try this. Yes. If it doesn't work, we won't try it again. I did regain my train of thought of where I was going when I was talking about vacations. I was going on vacation somewhere to Vietnam, and I sent out in our HIP chat, which was our internal communication stream, I said, I want you guys to all get together and come up with something that promotes more cultural glue within our organization. And I came back from vacation. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I went on to HIP chat, and I'm seeing all this weird stuff. She needs to fix those teeth. What was he thinking with that hairdo? I'm eating guacamole and chips. I'm enjoying a margarita. And there's all this banter going on, and I have no idea what's happening. And so I reached out to my executive assistant, and I'm like, I'm seeing stuff in HIP chat that doesn't make sense to me. And she said, oh yeah, you told them to come up with something that promotes our internal cultural glue. And they picked Thursday night movie night. Now, this is remote, so they all picked the same time, and they're sharing what they're eating, what they're drinking, what they're singing. And I'm watching all this beautiful banter that I had nothing to do with. It was so cool.
Yeah. And for those of you that may not know what HipChat is, that's now Slack, same thing. But, back then it was a competitor to Slack. They bought them. So, yeah, I mean, that creating that kind of thing, having that water cooler culture, having places to reward each other. You also came up with the green flag. And right. I think that's something that really helped us solidify that sticky culture, right? It's a simple way to recognize people. And I'm going to let you explain what it is, but anyone can do it. It's not top down, right? This is hey, you see something, you say something, but in a good way. And I love the story that, you kind of first saw this little monkey in a zoo running around with the green thing. So why don't you tell that story?
Sure. So I'm at the San Diego Zoo, and where the monkeys are, and they're kind of, going and stopping and looking, and it's very melodic, and everybody's silent. And all the monkeys are up top doing their thing. And all of a sudden, down on the ground, there's a hole in the wall, and this little tiny monkey comes running out with this green piece of cloth and was waving it like this. And I just felt overwhelmed, and I yelled, I got the green thing, I got the green thing, I got the green thing. And it didn't matter what that green thing was. Everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted that green thing. And in telling that story to my team, it kind of took on a life of its own. So anything good was a green thing. We landed a new client, green thing. Someone had a baby, green thing. Someone got their teeth cleaned, green thing. I mean, everything was a green thing. And to the tribal speak, that added just another element. The other thing that we did that I really, really liked a lot, and when I first did this, I thought, boy, this could come back to bite me, but we're going to give it a try. We're going to say yes. And that's the boo-boo of the month. Remember that, Chris?
Yeah, I love the boo-boo of the month. I love that.
Boo-boo of the month. So because we were remote, the last thing I wanted was any kind of infighting, or you can get that creep that comes into companies where somebody's patting themselves on the back and shortchanging some. I didn't want any of that. That could not exist. That would kill the culture that I was so striving to create. So I got in front of it and I created the Boo Boo of the Month. So during the course of the month, and there was a Boo Boo of the Month committee, 3 people. And anytime you screwed up, you captured it on an email and you sent it to the Boo Boo of the Month committee. And at the end of the month, the biggest boo-boo got a $50 gift card from Starbucks. So you were being applauded for sharing your boo-boo. And this is why I thought it was so important. Not only does it cut out infighting because you're busting yourself. Someone can't bust you. You're going to get $50 to bust yourself. But it also, I believe that if you do something great and you share it with me, I may retain it, I may not. If you tell me a time that you completely screwed up and share that with me, I'm never doing that. I'm never, ever doing that. So there's lessons to be learned with the boo-boo, but it was the infighting that, again, you can't bust someone if they're going to get rewarded for accidentally screwing up.
So in my book, The Power of Company Culture, and the second edition is almost out, October 31st. And we've been talking a lot about the 7 pillars that I have in the book that make a great company culture. So we started off this conversation about saying yes, and that's the positivity culture. And now we talked a little bit about, putting structure in place. And that's the measurement, right? How do you actually measure that the thing is happening that you want to happen? Is that a mechanism? Is that a policy? Is that a survey? Whatever. And I think you and I was sort of enjoyed putting in structure to make sure these good things happen.
We're KPI junkies.
Yeah. And now you're talking about the boo-boo of the month. And that is the mistakes pillar. So does your company know how to deal with mistakes in the right way? So somebody admits it, there's a way, whether that's you had this sort of, I guess, place where people could go and they could talk about it. And you would give an award for that. And that helps, like you said, people to avoid those mistakes. We didn't do Boo-Boo of the Month, but we did a lot of retrospectives. We would have meetings after every time we did a project or something with our client. And we would just have a meeting and say, what could we have done better? Where do we feel like we fell down? Where could we have done better next time? And that would be where someone would, raise their hand and say, I really screwed up in the beginning. I didn't realize what the client wanted. Okay, so how could we fix that, right? We did have a oops, my bad in Slack, but we didn't do any gift cards for it. But we had a place. The difference was I noticed that leaders had to start that ball rolling. The leaders had to show up and admit their mistakes first to kind of show everyone else it was safe to do that, right? Someone on their 3rd day wasn't going to raise their hand and say, boy, did I screw up today. They're still in that, I'm freaked out. Am I still going to be here? And then the green flag, or I got the green thing, is the recognition pillar. So without even knowing it, you've already talked about, and we all know your company was a great place to work. It was recognized many, many, many times as a best place to work. And we can see why, right? There's so many of the things that you need to be a great culture you were already doing. One thing I wanted to ask you is, if you were going to start another company today, is there something that you've learned since selling your company till today that maybe would cause you to do something different, in a better way? Is there something you might do that's different with the next company or the next group of people, that maybe because of the pandemic, maybe because generational changes, maybe you just are older and wiser, but is there something you would do different if you were starting a company today?
That is a great question. Yeah, and it's one that I've thought about quite a bit. I would have been more philanthropic with, and I don't mean money, philanthropic with my senior team. It wasn't even on my radar to groom them into, and this is going to sound so obnoxious, so I apologize in advance, but to groom them into being me, to thinking the way I think, to biting off, to taking the risks, to being to be a future CEO. If I could go back and turn back the clock when the company was, when we got north of $10 million and it's humming and everything's, you really can't break it anymore. I really wish I had taken a couple of years and groomed them into what their career could be moving forward, because that when I sold the company, they have to then prove themselves of what they can do next to step into bigger shoes. And I would like to have stepped them into bigger shoes myself.
Yeah. For me, there's certainly things that it took me a long time to learn. So I would like to maybe start a company off with the right things at the beginning, instead of, it was a lot of years of trying to like figure it out. And in the early years, I was sort of applying my knowledge and abilities as a sports coach into the business realm. And that really wasn't the right fit. It was okay, but there was a better way to do it. So starting something off in the beginning would be exciting. And then we talked earlier about that ability to be able to hire people, in different places. Well, I was sort of restricted in the United States. So it would be really interesting to have a fully global team, right? To take this and allow the team to be global and allow the work to just follow the sun, right? Yeah. And always someone could be working on stuff and wake up and you might find this project's already been finished. Boy, I went to bed and I was thinking, wow, how are we ever going to get this done? And I wake up and the team's already finished it. Like, that would be kind of amazing.
Yeah, we kind of fell into that accidental. When we were just going virtual or remote, my VP of marketing said, I need to leave the company because I'm pregnant and my husband wants to move back to New Zealand. And I said, well, okay, wait a minute. Do you want to leave my company? Well, no. Do you still want to work even though you're pregnant and after you have the baby? Yes. And I said, well, then we have an office in Auckland. It's called your home. And so all of a sudden I had someone who was a day ahead, but like 4 hours behind or something. And then our CTO met a gal in Poland and went to resign because he's going to move in with her in Poland. And I'm like, do you want to leave me? Well, no. Well, then we have an office. It's called your home in Poland. Anyway, and then the VP of business development ended up in Paris. It accidentally ended up that I had senior management in every time zone. So if something happened, anywhere in the world, one of my senior managers could pick it up. And it was just totally fortuitous.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that would be, even at scale as well, would be just really interesting. We had 3, sometimes 4 time zones. It depends on if we had people in Hawaii or not. We did it different times. And that was a little challenging because you were trying to be around and manage all of that yourself. But it's a different way of thinking to get into the whole routine of asynchronous work. Really it's kind of like Thor's hammer. It's kind of a really great tool if you've got people all around the world and you're, again, it works just sort of following the sun. And especially if that's the kind of work you're doing where, maybe it's not necessarily customer facing constantly.
Yeah.
If you're building a software, doing something like that. I just think that'd be exciting.
Well, and it's cool if you're a fairly small company, which we were. Like I said, we had 120 employees, so we weren't big, but we had a lot of the advantages that much larger companies have. When they have legitimate offices, sticks and brick offices around the world, we kind of ended up with senior management coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, is there anything that we missed as it relates to creating a sticky culture? Is there, in a remote company, is there something we should have covered that we forgot?
Yeah. The most basic, simple thing there is.
All right.
The smartest people you stumble over and do everything in your power to keep them. That is what a successful company does. Don't get tangled up in, well, I'm the boss and I'm the smartest one in the room. When I had my senior managers, I would say to them, if I'm hiring you as the VP of business development, VP marketing, VP of quality, VP of recruitment, whatever you were, If the day comes that I am smarter than you in your chosen area, you are in big trouble. But if I'm not smarter than you, don't ask me anything. Tell me what you're doing. Keep me informed. But remember, when it comes to your chosen area, you're the smartest one in the room when you're in the room with me. Don't ever let me be smarter than you.
Yeah, and this is fantastic advice, because we can expand that and say, well, okay, well, fine. How do I find these smart people? And it's not about hiring the A+ player or stealing the top person from your competitor or doing these things that are really hard. It's about noticing people along your journey that are smart. And they may not be the person who has the classic training to be that specific thing that you're talking about. But because I look back at my companies, and some of my best employees, we ended up moving them over time. They would do a great job in one department, and then there was an opening somewhere else, and they ended up taking that job. They had no training. I mean, I have one guy who went from verifications to customer service to sales to partnerships, and in everything he moved along, he killed it.
That's a
He
Jedi.
just killed it.
That's Jedi.
Right.
Jedi.
And he's just a smart guy, right? And a lot of my team, I was put the same way. We would hire people, just you meet someone and hey, they're smart, right? They'll figure it out. They don't need to be trained. They don't have 10 years experience in this thing. No, they're freaking smart people. They'll figure it out and then get out of their way.
Yeah, one of the things I'm very proud of, and this is going to sound odd because there's a negative side to it, I guess, if you look at it that way. But I created a compensation platform with my recruiters and I created a reputation that if you are really good, you want to work for my company. I worked very hard on getting that reputation out, that if you are very, very good, I'm a CEO that's going to ask you what I can do. I'm going to fuel your growth. My customer is my employee. Their customer is my client, but my customer is my employee. So I created this compensation model where if you're really, really good, you're making $170,000 a year as a recruiter. And if you weren't very good, you were making about somewhere between 45 and 60K a year as a recruiter. So what happened with that model? I didn't have to let the poor performers go because they quit. And when they would quit, the beautiful math about it is they went to work for my competitors.
Yeah.
So over the course of 20 years, I probably willingly lost 100 recruiters. And those 100 recruiters went to work for my competitors. It was a gorgeous machine. And the people making 170K, they're not going anywhere. They are optimally fed and they are happy. And so I never, in the last 5 years of the company, I don't think I lost a single person that I didn't want to lose.
Keep your best people. The worst people leave and go work for your competitor. I think that's called a win-win.
It was beautiful.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for being here today. I enjoyed our talks and interviews as always. Please don't forget to consider checking out the book. It comes out October 31st. You can pre-order it. You can buy it on the day of. If you're outside of the United States and happen to be watching this, you can buy it anywhere you buy books right now. I think it's available worldwide. It's just in the United States for some reason. It's a trick-or-treat gift. So it's on Halloween is when it's released. So thanks again, Kim, for being here, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Bye, everyone.